Okay, so I've had a fair amount of new subscribers recently, so some of you may not know this, but a few years ago I used to do a lot of league racing, and I actually ended up winning 2 championships. One of which was on F1 2016 on a pad, and the other was on F1 2020 on a wheel. I currently use a wheel, and I will do until the end of my F1 experience. I don't really know why I called it that, but it did get me thinking, how bad am I on a pad now? I haven't used the pads in, what, about 8 years? So the point of this challenge is I'm going to be setting a lap on a wheel, which is the lap you're looking at now, and we're going to see how many laps it takes me, or how many attempts I should say, to beat it on a pad. Now I will say I will be completely copying how I used to drive back on 2016, so I will be running full traction, ABS, automatic gears. I'm basically going to be driving like a noob, and we're going to see how many laps, or even if I can beat my wheel time. Just a disclaimer, I am not an F1 esports driver. I am not very good. Well, I like to think I'm somewhat capable at this game, but I wouldn't consider myself fast at this game. So some people may look at the lap time and think that's a shocking lap time. That's because it is. So the time I have to beat in this video is a 1 minute 18.192. I haven't driven with a pad in 8 years, almost 9 years, so I'm sure this will go great. Brilliant. I will say now, this was incredibly difficult. This was much harder than I thought it would be, and for the most part, the opening laps I just spent trying to get used to how to drive with a pad and invalidating a lot of lap times. The only way I could describe my driving would be 2017 Lance Stroll in like his opening 5 races. It honestly, it was just tragic. It took me 3 laps to actually get a legitimate lap time, although it was a 1:38.0, so you couldn't really class it as a legitimate lap time. And whenever I was on track to get a semi-respectable lap time, even though it was 3 seconds down, I just invalidate. Lap 5 was the first lap I didn't make any mistakes, but that was still 2.5 seconds off my wheel time. And going through the final chicane on lap 9, you can just see how difficult and how just painfully awkward I made it for myself. Even through the final corner, I can't even describe how I'm moving that wheel, but it's not pleasant. Do I even need to commentate over this clip? Literally the only time I was going green was down the main straight before any kind of corner, and then the second I hit any kind of corner, that would happen.
Oh brother, this guy stinks!
It took me 14 laps to get a first sector that I actually thought was alright. I was only 2 tenths off, but then by the middle sector I was 7 tenths off, and then by the third sector I was still 7 tenths off, but I invalidate. So at least we had some signs of improvement, just not a lot. However, by lap 15 I was getting into the rhythm of things, and coming through the final corner we're going to get our first legitimate lap time. We're going to be almost 4 tenths off, but it's a decent attempt and we're finding a rhythm now. Never mind. Now I will say, if there's one thing I hate on F1 games, it's just sitting on time trial doing lap after lap, and especially on a pad, a track I don't like. I was really starting to get annoyed by this challenge, and I was only 20 laps in. Even more so by the fact that I wasn't consistently getting improvements. I was just kind of throwing the car into corners, seeing what happened, and if it worked, it worked. So 20 laps in, I decided to take a bit of a break. The break didn't really... oh god. Let's cut that. The break didn't really do me too much good, because I came back and I was still 7 tenths down. See, I was consistently getting 1:18.8, just there was no improvement beyond that. Lap number 22 though, and we have our best lap yet. We are within a tenth coming through the final chicane, but through the final corner we lose absolutely everything somehow, and we finish with an 18.5. By lap 27 I was sort of getting the hang of using a pad, but again you can see that none of the corners really flowed at all. I kind of just threw the car in and I didn't feel like I had any control like I would on a wheel. It was very much how I imagined the 2014 Ferrari must feel, just throwing the car in and seeing if it works. We did actually have a moment of positivity on lap 34 however, because despite going through 2 corners, we actually had a green delta. Admittedly sector 1 was the easiest of the sectors. We did go purple on a pad, however the second we hit sector 2, it just all goes to shit. But it was at least something for me to hold on to, because by this point I was getting close to almost doing a full race distance on time trial with a pad, and I wanted to kill someone. It was also about 1 in the morning by this point, so I decided, you know what, I'm going to try again tomorrow. I did keep a tally of my attempts, because obviously I did restart laps occasionally, and I ended day 1 on 60 attempts, with our fastest lap being a 1:18.5, 4 attempts off the time we needed.
Day 2.
This was the opening lap of day number 2 of the challenge, and it looked like through the first corners we actually had a bit of a rhythm, unlike the start of yesterday. We actually managed to maintain our pace over the course of the lap to be just over half a tenth off, but even though it didn't look like we were going to improve, I was pretty happy with this. It was a good warm-up, and I was actually in positive spirits for once. And despite invalidating the lap time in the end, I still felt pretty confident. However, it was weird because as my confidence grew, so did my number of mistakes. We went back to old habits of just invalidating the lap time, going wide at this sodding corner, and just spinning in general. And that's how I felt about that. So our first clean lap of the day came on lap 11, or attempt, I think 20 by this point, where we get 2.5 attempts off our time. Our fastest lap so far in this challenge, but still quite a way to go. I will confess however, from this point I don't actually complete many laps because I was getting more and more frustrated once again with time trial. I'd either invalidate my lap, or just make a mistake and restart early. By this point I reckon I was on attempts, I don't know, 30, maybe 40. I'd had a lot of resets by this point and my frustration was really showing. I'd had an hour of consistent failed attempts at a track I don't like, in a game mode I don't like, and a challenge I was really starting to despise. So once again, I took a bit of a break to regain my sanity. Now I don't know what happened during that break. I know I went downstairs, I made some food, obviously ate, had a drink. Nothing out of the ordinary happened, but when I came back, I must have had a revelation because I could suddenly drive on pad.
Hooray!
So, in total it took me 108 attempts to beat my wheel time on a pad. And before you ask, no, I wasn't planning on going for sub 118. On reflection, that challenge really shouldn't have been that difficult, but it's something I never ever want to repeat again. I can happily say I'll be going back to wheel and never ever touching a pad again.